Paul Tyler with a special episode of both the ReImagine podcast and that Annuity Show. We recently organized a forum in 5 parts. Laura, are you sure there were 5 parts?
Oh, yes, quite sure. 5 parts.
5 parts focused on reimagining retirement in a post-COVID world. Today, we're sharing the conversation from forum number 3 entitled Getting Seniors to Know, Like, and Trust Us in a Virtual World. And Laura, tell us, who do we have on our panel? It was a great discussion.
It really was. So we had Farron Blanc from Meet Jerry, Kathy DeWitt Dunn from DeWitt and Dunn, Rian Horgan from Kinder, Manish Malhora from Income Discovery, Anil Sinwal from RGAX, and Seth Rachlin from Capgemini.
Thank you. And Ramsey, what was your what was your biggest takeaway on the program?
So yet another great panel. A lot of amazing things were discussed. The one phrase that really hit home for me was meeting retirees where they are. And we had more than one panelist use that phrase. And what's particularly striking to me about it is that meeting someone where they are actually can mean a lot of things. It can mean emotionally, it can mean in their physical space. But it's an attitude that I think we need to see more of in our industry. I think in the industry, we often try to get customers to meet us where we are. And so I think that change of mindset, if we really take it to heart, can potentially be super impactful.
Yeah, I think, it was really interesting to think about, like, where do you expect seniors to come and knock on your door and talk about retirement? No, probably not. And is it space? Is it a time? Is it a date, right? Is it a birth date? Congratulations, Ramsey, you turned 59 and a half. You can actually take money out of your defined contribution plans without a penalty, right? It's so I think that's a TBD for a lot of the business models starting out. Laura, how about you?
You know, in the same line of meeting them where they are, it's also about building trust in small steps. So we can't assume that they're going to trust us when we show up knocking at their door or their Zoom. So it's both virtually and in person. How do we build trust, especially over the last few months with all the change and being people online and meeting them there? So how do we communicate with them in a way that makes sense and then also expect them to provide information to us in a way that they don't feel as though it's going to be jeopardized? So it's really the right user experience for that group that we're calling seniors, and how do we serve them where they are in ways that best fit their needs?
Yeah, now you said it, calling them seniors. Ramsey, we had a lot of good discussion around that, right?
We did.
Yeah, so I think for seniors, what struck me as very salient was make seniors feel good about who they are. Make them feel strong. Don't make them feel weak. Rian Horgan of Kinder said, her organization was trying to be the Apple Watch, not the Life Alert. And I think that's it's so true. One technology can feel like I'm watching my parents feel spied on. The other one feels like, well, actually there's some benefit and it's kind of cool to do this. And, how do we create products with identical pieces of technology that are accepted, embraced versus pushed away, unplugged, had the batteries taken out, which my mom did all the time. And good luck trying to get the batteries back in from 2,000 miles away. Yeah. So anyway, with that, Laura, do you want to run the program?
Let's roll tape.
In a row. Thank you. Appreciate the time, energy and really good contributions you've made to this. What we've said for the last 2 times is, that retirement really is on the cusp of massive change. And I think if you're working for a carrier today, especially when I say today, I mean literally today, you're faced with unbelievably low interest rates. You've got a dispersed workforce. You've got technology coming at you from all sorts of directions. And, the consumers are changing a lot. So our first session was really the question was, what are the investment themes? Like, I wish there's this great video, you've probably all seen it, where some female comedian has this conversation with her former self. And that was back like in April. She's like, I can't, I'm too busy to have a dog, I've got to travel all the time. And she's like, ha, 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 buy Zoom. Well, in our space, we all spend so much time in the trenches. Well, Yeah, if we know, we know, where should we be putting money? So we actually really identified some interesting investment themes. I think number one was engaging with consumers, which is a massive problem. How do you, if you're an advisor, how do you find clients today? If you're a company, how do you create them? I think if you're a technology or service provider, how do you keep them happy? How do you keep them, staying with the companies that they've identified? So forum number two was really about psychology and technology. How do you sort of reorient people? How does behavioral finance change with technology and remote engagement? This one is related, but a little different, which is specifically on seniors. How do we actually build trust today with seniors? Is it through doing the same thing the same way? A face-to-face agent, connecting them with them in very different ways? Is it um, uh, engaging with them on a small screen, where in ways where we know seniors are spending a massive amount of time on their phones. We see it on our website. We see traffic. Well, just this last week, I pulled up these stats. Laura, I think, and Anthony, I think what 60 between 60 and 70% of our traffic from people over the age 75 is now coming through mobile devices. What? When was this? This is how did this happen? Is it that we're giving them interesting tools to work with? Is it the way in which we engage with them through communities? I think ARB has been sort of the monster organization for years and years, kind of defined the state of being in that part of your life where you want to relate to them. Is that really the community? Is that the group that's going to be the most powerful one, introducing customers to product providers like us, or services like this? Is there, what's that next organization or next community that has such strong following that they can actually create warm referrals, warm connections, warm setup for companies? So, I mentioned a couple forums. We've been doing a lot of experimentation with our website and some of our products. We put smartphones, an iOS app in the hands of our agents to help them sell products to their agents. We've spun up chat this year. Literally today, it was at lunchtime. I ended up chatting with somebody age 58 in Oklahoma, taking them from chat. This is all, by the way, we're in the spirit of learning. Tom Buckingham's on here, trying to understand the psychology of taking somebody from online chat. Guess what? I was able to get this person, 58 years old, on Zoom, share my screen, do illustrations, set up time, with Calendly for, future, another discussion afterwards. So a lot of change here. And so the question today is, how does it change? The answer is probably yes to all of them. But we've got a really good panel of people who are going to come at this from very different directions. So Laura, do you want to just take it from here?
Sure. So again, thank you all for being here with us this afternoon. And for this part of the discussion, I'm happy to introduce Seth Rachland, the Chief Innovation Officer Insurance at Capgemini. He's going to be our panel moderator for today's discussion. So Seth, the floor is yours.
Yes, once again, helps to unmute. Thanks very much. Glad to be here and really appreciate the opportunity to meet you all, to be part of this group. It's, I think, I've been in 10 minutes and I'm already seeing the value. So great conversation. So let me just begin by introducing my panelists. So we have Farron Blank, co-founder and CEO of Jerry. Kathy DeWitt Dunn, president and CEO of DeWitt & Dunn. Rianne Horgan, founder, CEO of Sliver. Manish Malhotra, CEO of Income Discovery. And Anil Sanwal, VP and Business Initiative Lead for RGAX. And as Paul mentioned, our topic is seniors, and our topic is dealing with and relating to and earning the trust of seniors in a virtual world. And I thought I would just actually start before we jump in by just kind of giving one kind of quick little research finding. So one of my jobs at Capgemini is to supervise our research activities, and we do an annual World Insurance Report. And a key feature of that is we ask questions about how people transact with insurance companies. How do they get information? How do they learn about products? How do they actually buy products? And this year we had intended to do a research project on just how different millennials were from other typical insurance customers. So we asked everybody the typical question, you know, how likely are you to use digital channels to interact with your insurer, fully expecting that the millennials would be at the top of the charts and that as you got older, it would be less and less. And this year, for the first time, the Gen X or older outpaced the millennials. And so it was very interesting finding, of course, torpedoed the idea that we'd have a report about how different millennials were, but I think very indicative of what we heard in the breakout and what we're all kind of seeing, which is that these digital channels, the virtual world we live in is meaningful to everybody and is in many respects the new normal. So let me kind of start out, and I think it'd be great if each of the panelists, and I'll call on you one by one, kind of talked to, you know, number one, kind of what does your company do, and how have you approached this issue of earning the trust of seniors in a virtual or a digital way? So we'll start with Farron from Jerry.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning or evening, depending on where you are in the world. So yeah, briefly, Jerry, what we do is we help seniors and their loved ones, their families, typically people, septuagenarians, octogenarians, navigate all the complexities around senior care, whether that's in-home, so finding home health aides, as well as out of home. And yeah, really that piece around trust is one of the most important things that we find. So it's really around helping seniors with everything from essentials, so getting groceries, arranging transportation, to essential documents such as wills, powers of attorney, estate planning, and solving those like core, almost like hygiene problems first. And then that's where you unlock deeper, richer conversations where, you know, just today I was in our login, I was seeing that some of our clients who've been with us for 10 months, 12 months are now talking about depression and suicide, you know, and reaching out, you know, to our care concierges and asking advice. And so it's obviously, you know, by meeting those needs and building simple tools and trying to listen to seniors, we found that, you know, for a large segment of our users, we're able to gain their trust and enable them to serve, you know, higher purposes, whether that's talking about paying for senior care and remaining financially independent, which, you know, I think everyone on this call is involved with, to, you know, the really, really heavy stuff that we see, you know, in a fair amount on a bit of an edge case, you know, such as depression or, you know, emotional cognitive well-being.
Great, that's great. So Kathy, same question to you. What are you seeing out there?
One of the things in my practice, I've been on the radio, a lot of panelists know, for over 20 years in the DFW area. And I think it's just the same message in our firm. We focus in on income replacement and generating lifetime income. I know that's something that everybody talks about, but it's something that we really do best. And with all of the different online tools and resources that we have on our website and being able to reach out, we have email nurture campaigns, we text our clients. I mean, it's just amazing how we've moved away from the one-on-one meeting. I think in the COVID era, what's happened this past year, it's been very important to stay up with what everyone is doing, and that's social distancing and trying to make the best of the situation. But we've turned it around with our clients. We've had classes and online classes and also conference calls teaching seniors how to get online, how to do Zoom, and also telling them, well, if you don't remember anything after this, call your grandchild, they'll be able to help you. But we have found that by teaching and utilizing a lot of the tools and resources that we have and implementing them with the seniors, we've been quite successful. And then that has also been able to generate to online trust and being able to help work with moving their assets, making them feel more comfortable. And it's pretty interesting today. I've already had approximately 9 Zoom meetings since early this morning. And that's a lot of people to reach out. But back in the day, you know, everybody comes to your office and they think they're going to be there for about an hour, and that's what they expect. So we've also been able to manage the expectation. And like Mike Kalin said, the intimacy, you know, you're actually in their home with them. So we've just found that this is in this era that we've really tried to just apply all of these different options and features and educate all of the seniors on how they can do things a little bit differently while keeping them safe.
That's great. That's great. Rianne?
Sorry, I'm coming. Sorry, there we go. I had my kids jumped into my office a few minutes ago, so I put myself on mute. My name is Rian Horgan. I'm the founder and CEO of Silver. Our app is dedicated to helping baby boomers power their next act. As I look at all the faces around this room, I'm going to make a statement that might be a little controversial, but I hate the word senior. It connotes old, it connotes dying. And as I look around this room, what I see is actually my potential customers. I see a number of people here who are in their 50s and 60s, who are living their best next act. It might be that you're continuing what you've been doing. It may be that you've changed what you're doing, but we're purpose built for this demographic. And what we're really excited about is using empowering technology to really give our customers confidence and peace of mind. So we believe in humans as part of the process, but we also think that our customers can get going and do their research online. And if you design empowering technology for them, you can really meet them where they are. I always say, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about design for a second, which is, I imagine there's a number of people on this call that are wearing Apple Watches. Our goal at Silver is to be the Apple Watch, not to be the Life Alert. There is this view that if you're over the age of 50, that the technology you have is clunky, it's big fonts, it's purpose built for this like old person. And I would challenge anyone to download the app after we're done with this call today. And hopefully what you see is an experience that feels really comfortable, feels really bright and lively and engaging, and doesn't make you feel old. And that when I think about our customer is, you know, how do you meet them where they are? These are tech savvy customers. How do you design for them? But importantly, how do you empower them? The last comment I would make, and I think this just goes to like the group that we have here today, is that 50% of our customers are afraid of running out of money in retirement. It's a huge issue in this post-pension world. And so at the center of the app, what we've done is try to really meet our customers where they are. So we provide every customer with a retirement score. That retirement score predicts how long their savings are going to last. And what we have seen through that experience is that it very quickly gives customers a sense of, you know, are they going to be okay? And if you can answer that question, I think you're on your way to giving this consumer confidence.
Yeah, thanks very much. And I know, Manish, you and I have talked in the past, and you're very much plugged into those same kinds of questions. What are your thoughts on our topic in general, and what Rianne just said?
Yes, so right. I mean, she touched upon that. This is a question that people have, and to kind of go back to the main question that you said, how do we earn the trust? And for that, what our take has been, and our customers have done the same, is put objectively in front of them through a digital engagement why the strategies and the products that you're recommending to them are better, and how much better are they. So in our whole approach, we come up with something called as a safe retirement income. Like Rian mentioned, about a number of years, the money will last. We take a slightly different approach. We say, what is your safe retirement income if you live up to 90th percentile lifespan, and safe is defined as money that will last you at 90% probability of success from the mathematical side of the story. And show them that if they do this versus that, or give them first what's the best optimal answer, which will maximize that safe retirement income by $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 on after-tax basis. Now that objectively, once you put it in front of the client, you gain trust, right? And they can see, they can change the levels, they can move it left and right and see what they were thinking, why it was that $20,000 less. So this digital empowerment, and that's where you need slightly different technology, and that's what we've been doing for over a decade now, is developing a whole AI to do this uh, interactive advice for decumulation problem, which is very, very tough. And that's where we are a B2B and a B2B, B2B2C solution. So we don't directly sell to our customers, but we are the brains behind a lot of institutions, retirement income solution in the market that are very trusted institutions.
Thanks very much. That's very interesting. So Anil, you and I are both in the innovation game for larger companies. Be interested in your reflections on just kind of how landscape has changed and the opportunity space around this core topic of trust in the virtual world.
Yeah, so just a bit of context. I'm with RGAX, the transformation engine of global life and health reinsurer RGA. And so in that role, we've got access to colleagues on the traditional side who then have contact with the life and health insurers all over the world, who then in turn have contact with the actual consumers, some of whom are aging individuals. And so what I've been doing in this global role since I took it on a couple of months ago is really looking around the world and seeing sort of what are some of those really effective solutions that are out there. At the same time, what are some of the challenges and opportunities? So if I can start to summarize a little bit, I would say that, you know, consumer engagement is still the #1 game here. And just because they're seniors or elderly individuals doesn't mean, you know, it's consumer engagement is still the #1 focus. It's just we need to meet them where they are. And I think I've heard this so far from my other panelists. But, you know, understanding what's going to be first order value for them. And if we extend that and say, okay, consumer engagement is the first port of call, we want to engage them, but then we want to ideally get access to their data so we can then use it to continue to understand their evolving needs and risk profiles. Then you really need to deliver first order value. And not that the seniors are really any different than anyone else, perhaps a little bit more skeptical perhaps of online, digital, virtual, et cetera. So in addition to providing that first order value, I would say getting them to trust you as a provider. And so if I can just give an example, we've got a startup partner we're working with in the UK who's creating a connected set-top box where you connect in different devices, but it's all connected to the TV, because we know that the TV for a lot of elderly people is sometimes their best friend. I think in the UK, 80% of seniors will say, you know, that's my #1 form of companionship. And people have had this in their homes for ages. So again, just an example of, you know, building from something that's comfortable for them. The other thing is really, and I meant, somebody mentioned about wearable devices, but just generally in terms of tools that we give them to interact with these devices, they need to be designed for them. And so what you'll see in a lot of these solutions for seniors is remote control devices that don't have 60 buttons, but maybe 4 or 5 that they can easily learn and use. So again, it has to be easy to use as well. So if I can start to summarize, it's really consumer engagement is still important, but it has to provide first order value for the senior. And we have to do a good job in terms of gaining their trust.
That's great. You know, interesting. I mean, you talked a lot about, I think, concepts around consumer behavior and consumer trust and all of those kinds of things. And I think that's true regardless of the market you target, right? I don't think that you treat as you don't need to earn the trust of a younger person. So I started out this panel by talking about how we started writing a report on millennials, and then we decided that we weren't going to talk about millennials. And then Rian, I think, was very provocatively kind of attacked this word senior and said we didn't need it or we shouldn't use it. So I'm going to kind of go around again now with a different question, and that question is really, what is different about seniors, and should we think about them differently, or is it better to think of broader categories or more, or a different way of kind of slicing up our target markets and our target audiences? It's not based on age, but is based on some other more meaningful distinction. So in other words, you know, it's I'm the host of the panel, so I get to say, does the panel even make sense? And so this is the question: does the panel even make sense? And should we be talking about seniors, or should we be talking about, as Rian put it, you know, those who are prepared for retirement, and those who may have a funding issue, or those who are vulnerable, as Farron was talking about, and those who are more secure. So with that, Farron, we'll start with you again. Your reaction to Rian's comment around seniors and its relevance as a label, if you will.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree completely. I think there is no homogeneous group of seniors. We're seeing it even in our customer base of a couple thousand members, you know, that pay monthly subscriptions, you know, of $80. It ranges from people who are super savvy, super with it, only want companionship, you know, because they're missed out due to COVID, to people who, you know, are largely bedridden, you know, and it doesn't break down by age. Like those two people, you know, one is 80, you know, they're completely with it, you know, active adult, and the other person is in their, you know, mid 60s. And so I think it is, I mean, there is no homogeneous group. I'd say it largely breaks down. I mean, when we think about our segments, right, we largely think about wealth and then education. And then we put on a couple other like lenses as well around like family org structure and support networks, you know, and then their primary needs. But calling someone as senior and saying, oh, everyone needs XYZ. So for the purposes of the panel, everyone needs an annuity, or everyone needs a long-term care insurance policy, you know, isn't our experience, at least that we're seeing in the field.
Thanks for that. Kathy, your thoughts? You're out there in the field with customers every day. How do you put them into categories?
Well, interesting enough, I agree with Rihanna. One of the challenges is that we have a lot of people that are even in their 50s that are retiring here in the DFW area and across the nation. So how do we categorize them as a senior because they're no longer working and they're retired? So I think just focusing in on you know, what they're doing, what they're, you know, we talked about a little bit yesterday about the AARP model. We've done a really great job of marketing to seniors for AARP, also with Medicare. And so we've kind of lumped everybody in this category of, you know, now you're retired, and, you know, not necessarily do you have your next, which is what we've talked about, you know, throughout this panel today. And I think just focusing in on working with people based upon their goals and objectives. But I do agree, like senior is kind of a big word, and we've all used it today. And yesterday I was probably the oldest one on the panel, but maybe not today, but you know, that was true. So, you know, as I get closer to 60, if somebody wants to call me a senior, you know, that's fine. But, you know, I just think, you know, it's just such a broad word, and hopefully, you know, we can re-educate the consumer. But I definitely feel like the people that come into my practice don't feel like they're a senior whatsoever. They're ready to go on and have a play check, go have fun, enjoy themselves in retirement, go on and do their next. So it's kind of an interesting question, I think.
Great. So Rianne, I'm not going to ask if you agree with yourself, but I will ask, if not senior, what's the right way to think about the market?
Yeah. So what I think about this market, and again, I challenge the senior word. I also challenge the over 50, because I think what we're all saying is that there's all these different segments. But when I contrast the cohort that we're focused on, which is 50s and 60s to millennials, what I will say is there are a lot of differences, and they need products built for them. So the first thing I would say is that the problems that they're trying to solve and the products that they need are different. You know, you don't need to be talking about Medicare to a 25-year-old, but someone who is, you know, leaving the workforce at 60 and trying to figure out their bridge to Medicare needs a certain set of products. And when they're 64 and 65, they're going to want to get smart about Medicare, as an example. So I do think that there is this need for this kind of set of services that actually solve the problem, the jobs to be done at this particular phase. But and the second thing I would say is that this customer is tech savvy, but their tech usage is different. And I always say that like we know how to acquire this customer and we acquire them digitally, but they're not on TikTok and they're not on Snapchat. They're on Facebook and they're in lots of other places. So it's just a question of where are they? It's not a question of are they online? They're just not in the places that millennials are. And I think if you can get over the fact that they're like not on TikTok and you can still believe that someone is tech savvy, then I think you start to get to this point of saying, okay, you know, how do I design an experience for this demographic who has this new set of problems to be solved, jobs to be done, and a new set of products that they need to purchase to actually solve these challenges. And so I think about it in that construct, which is new problems, new products, and then like, how do you design tech that meets them where they are?
Awesome. Awesome. So Manish, your thoughts?
So on the product side, right, this is kind of where I will focus my response. I believe the products, at least when you're looking at the annuity side of the story, which would give lifetime income, and I will quote the Alliance for Lifetime Income, a lot of research which said people want lifetime income, but they don't want annuities. And it's just a matter of what is being positioned, et cetera. And with that is where I would go. It's about how we've been telling, I don't think we need new products. We need simpler products. And a lot of people know the annuity is some of the ones that are sold, the buyer doesn't understand anything at all. Even a producer doesn't understand the product very well. It's just actuarially so complex of a product. We need simpler products. That will do, but what is needed with those simpler products is the ability, which has been missed, right? At least when it is coming to annuity and lifetime income, is they've all been positioned in isolation. You know what? You got to retire, you got to cover your essential expenses with guaranteed income, Social Security, pension, and you need annuity in this way. Where we've come at this is that, yes, people do need coverage for essential expenses, but it doesn't have to begin right on retirement. If we strategically or synergistically time various sources and have some of this lifetime income later, and there are some tax benefits, et cetera, that you can actually create $20,000, $30,000 more. So what has been missing in the industry, right? Use a simpler product, but tell a synergistic story of how our product will be a part of your solution. It's not the complete solution for your retirement income. Annuity is a part. How it will work synergistically with your Social Security claiming, with withdrawal from your investment assets, with your pension, etc., to create a better retirement income plan for you, which we ultimately, as I said, always go down to how much additional safe retirement income that you can have. So it is, that's kind of where I would go, is you, and on product, the second part of your question, how do you segment people? There has been some very good solid research done by LIMRA. I don't know how many of you have seen it. They did some psychographical analysis, segmentation, etc. They came up with some very good solid profiles of typical buyers, non-buyers, etc. I think that's the way it has to be looked. Women is a big category. I don't know if you know the statistics. More than half the purchasers of the annuity are women. And there's a reason for that. Generally, women have not been investment risk taking as much as men. So psychological segmentation on the behavior people have and positioning the experience around that could work wonders in terms of product adoption.
All right, Anil, I will let you go quickly and then I'll flip the order next time we go around, so you'll get the next question first.
Yeah, so I don't disagree with what's been said so far. I will say, if we give an example of a, let's say, health and wellness app or program that's designed for, relatively younger folks, the question I ask myself, could you put seniors in that program and would it be effective? And I think, in some respects that's going to be a yes, but then there are certain unique aspects which require some specific attention around seniors. So, whether it's nutrition or exercise or just the general well-being, you're going to be focusing on different medical conditions. There are some initiatives and themes and projects I'm working on which speak to, for example, aging in place. And so what can we do to help people age in place? And so we have this continuum of care. So people, have their home they live in, they age in the home, we bring them the services they need so that we avoid them moving into an expensive long-term care facility until that time that they really need it. And so if we look at that sort of holistic approach, that we need to tailor it somewhat to people who are going to be at that point at some stage in their life where, they're going to start losing independence. So again, I disagree. I agree with what's been said so far, but I think we need to tailor it and customize it to some extent for the senior.
Great, thank you. So I want to move back to the question of trust a little bit. And when I started in the industry, the way insurance companies earned trust was they built massive marble and beautiful buildings that were, went all the way up to the sky in almost every city. They put their name on top, and those big structures, they conveyed longevity. They conveyed the fact that the company would be there for you 30, 40, however many years it was from a retirement perspective. And now I think we're talking a lot about the relationship between technology and trust. And I think we risk making the assumption that people trust tech. And I think that, as we enter this next phase where I think I saw flash across my screen that there's probably going to be an antitrust case against Facebook, the kind of, era where we think the tech companies can do no wrong is clearly behind us. So I guess I'd like your thoughts on, most of you I think are in the technology space in one way or another. And Kathy, I know you rely on technology to a large part in your business. So how do we handle the tech plus trust equation? So how do we create tech that we can actually trust as opposed to tech that we distrust? And how does that relate to what we're all trying to do in insurance? So Anil, I promised I'd start with you, so I'll start with you.
Yeah, so I'll go back to perhaps what I said a little bit earlier, which is really focusing on first order value for the elderly individual and then creating that engagement. And I think it's a little bit proof is in the pudding that if you have that focus on the senior first order value, they will start to trust you. And you will be able to see that trust emerging when you see the engagement. And again, I think of some specific examples, again, that UK startup partner we have using the set-top box. We've got another startup partner in the US who focuses their activities on the care home and care facilities. And they're seeing engagement. So the US partner are seeing engagement levels with their app and platform, which are essentially at the levels of Pinterest and Facebook, et cetera. So again, really proof is in the pudding. And I think it comes back to if you truly have the first order value of the senior as your mission, and you truly want to create that engagement and provide that first order value for them, things are going to fall into place nicely.
Thank you. Thank you. So Manish, you're a new company. Your software makes recommendations as to how people should basically manage their money over the course of their later years. Why should they trust your software?
In fact, what I would say, the way it's been used today is the software is used in conjunction with a professional. In the area where we operate, which is retirement accumulation, retirement income, etc., is actually the software to get people how to get retirement income, how to get more out of it, the money you have. Now, as I said, we are being used by very large institutions that are very trusted names in the industry, and they have, one of them has a digital engagement in the defined contribution plans, but you cannot execute the recommendation currently through digitally. And there's a reason for that. There are some legal compliance reasons, but we are of the opinion that in the retirement income decisions, which are high value decisions, irreversible decisions, technology will always be able to do the heavy lifting of finding everything that's good for the client. But a consumer, a retiree, would need to have one conversation with a professional about the same stuff what the software is saying, but have a human conversation before pulling the trigger on these high value, irreversible decisions. So you do everything digitally, you can get a PDF and you call a retirement consultant on the phone. And that's how you settle your holdings and make those irreversible decisions. That's where the industry is today. I have not heard from any participant, any of our client base, is that whether that human can be eliminated completely. The human can go virtual, like Zoom, but having a human face reiterate what the software has said for these high value decisions is critical.
Rand, do you agree?
So look, so we, our app, it's a digital experience, but we have a number of partners in our retirement store that have human services. So as an example, we partnered in this Medicare season with eHealth. And, they're seeing a very significant uptick this year of consumers buying their Medicare plans 100% online, but there's still a sizable percentage that want to get on the phone. And so, in that particular scenario, we're helping our customers do their research and then have introduced them to a partner that, again, meets them where they are with a digital and or phone-based service. I want to go back to this comment of like, meet them where they are. At the core of our app, we give our customers a free retirement plan and this retirement score. And when we thought about designing this experience, it would have been really easy to start with just connect all your accounts with Plaid and get going. But what we knew really early on was that most of this customer base had never connected their accounts with Plaid. Oh, and by the way, what's the probability of them getting through 8 connections on Plaid successfully in one go, which is likely what they'd have to do given their accounts being in lots of different places. So we designed an experience that allowed you to connect your account if you wanted to, but also allowed you to do self-reporting. And so as we thought about that experience, a lot of what we thought about, frankly, was trust, which was we knew that this customer didn't know Plaid yet. And while we see the value of Plaid, and we've very clearly explained the value of Plaid in the experience, like we knew this was a big moment that early on our days was going to end up being a real blocker in the experience. And so I really thought about, okay, there's value to Plaid. How do we reintroduce it at different parts of the experience? And so again, I think it's knowing, particularly as a startup, whether or not your brand has trust yet. Can you rent trust with the partners that you have in our retirement store? And then how do you design an experience that allows a customer, when they do trust you, to take next steps, but not force them to have this really high trust experience from day one?
Interesting. Kathy, do you worry about stuff like that, or do people distrust you?
We all worry about that. I think one of the things that probably makes our firm a little bit different is that we're a registered investment advisor. We're a comprehensive firm. And when we're meeting with clients, we aren't pushing a product. So what we're doing is solving for what the client is looking for, whether they're looking for fixed income, they're looking for long-term care, looking for life insurance, looking for Medicare solutions. So we pretty much handle everything from start to finish. But I think also in the space of being a registered investment advisor and being a fiduciary, it adds a little bit more weight than just somebody that's pushing a product. And I guess the trust factor from my end with my firm, after being on the radio, as I mentioned before, for over 20 years in the DFW area, I've never been censured, fined, or taken off the air. And in the DFW area, that's huge because almost everybody's had an issue with a regulator. So we just do right by our clients, and we allow them to tell us what they're looking for, and we give them several different options so that at the very end they feel comfortable. And with the plan that we come up with, they may have 1, 2, or 3 options. It's just not one product, one company, and one solution. So I think they feel comfortable, because when we take a look at retirement planning for them, by them being able to see all the different options and for them to select, I think it gives them the comfort level of, we're not just a one go-to product. So what we're doing is trying to provide added peace of mind, income, and making sure that their money lasts longer than they do. So I think it's very key on the trust component, because you're not ever going to really have a long-term client if you don't have the trust there. And I would say that we have, and over the 25 years I've been doing this, I bet you I have a 95% retention on my clients. That includes death claims.
That's terrific. So Farron, you get to bring us home for this panel. Your thoughts on trust, technology. You're obviously committed to technology through what you're doing and how you're doing it. What's the answer there?
Yeah, no, I mean, everything I think people have said has been pretty much spot on. What I would say too is it comes up about 25%, 26% of the time. A lot of people, I think Rhiannon was talking about calling, or maybe someone else was talking about phone calling, and that leads to trust. So 25% of our people, you know, when they're seeking information during the onboarding process, where they have questions around finding a home health aide or finding senior living community or coming up with an estate plan, you know, their biggest rejection, or the reason when we ask them why they haven't completed to date, is that they're afraid of getting spammed, you know, like robocalled to death, you know, and we have like recordings of just, you know, where people will call and leave us a voicemail, and you'll just hear that they're getting phone calls incessantly, you know, and just not aware of who's calling, particularly during annual enrollment for Medicare, like Med Sup and Med Advantage plans. So I mean, yeah, it's you know, there's all those little things that we can do around trust, but then it's not even abusing it as well, you know, and trying to stand outside of the category of unscrupulous actors who, you know, are just looking at this as like, you know, reselling a lead or repackaging and just like, you know, dial, power dialing and all that type of stuff.
Cool, thanks. So I am mindful of the time and my run of show, and trusting my run of show, it tells me that I'm supposed to hand off to Ramsey, who based on my chat seems to have left the conference. So Laura, I leave it to you in terms of what I'm actually supposed to do at this point.
Great, thank you so much, Seth. And it's my pleasure to hand it over to Paul Tyler.
Well, who will hand it over to Mark Fitzgerald to lead this round of questioning off, and we will, between the two of us, make sure we answer as many questions. We have great questions in the chat line, or in the chat, and we're also going to want to have you ask those questions yourself. So Mark, take it away here. Oh, Mark, you're mute.
Sorry about that. You know, in our breakout session, it was interesting. You know, Mike and I were talking about, you know, the agent adoption to technology, and it seems to be very two polar extremes. You know, one subset of agents will excel and actually, you know, increase their business, and I know Kathy's done a great job of that. And another subset of agents really don't engage. And I guess one question to Mike is, you know, how do you see bridging the gap between the two kind of polar extremes in terms of agent behavior and engagement with clients?
Yeah, I think this is a great area. You know, IMOs have forever looked for ways of creating value, and lead generation is probably the number one thing, or compensation, the number one. You know, digital training through IMOs, I think, is a huge opportunity right now. And it's probably really three groups of advisors. There's the self-starters, there's the ones that are never going to change, but there's clearly the movable middle that need and want what we could help them with. So, you know, we're in the beginning. We're in the third or fourth inning of this revolution. And I really do think, you know, these digital tools are going to make agents more relevant, because they're going to help agents be more productive. So I think it's nothing but a positive. I think there are, you know, thousands that will engage the tools if they're provided.
Yeah, and it's what's interesting is it doesn't seem like it's any subset of agent that is adopting or not adopting. I mean, various age demographics in terms of agents engaging digitally, different tenures being in the business in terms of them engaging digitally. So I think, you know, that behavior also kind of transcends probably down to the client level, you know, similar to what Rhiannon was talking about not being, you know, senior-based market and senior-based marketing, but really kind of marketing to a broad population, and what their, I guess, ability to adapt to changes. And how do we tap into that? And how do we identify where those hurdles are?
Yeah, and my guess too is digital engagement is going to be different for boomers than millennials. So they're both going to transact digitally. Boomers may be more open and willing to have human interaction, and millennials may still want frictionless journeys. So, all digital engagement is probably not going to be created equally.
Agreed.
Hey, Mark, I'm just going to maybe tag team here. Joy, love to get have you asked your question. I think having been quarantined with families, right, brings new definition to closeness and and all the challenges and I think I say creates challenges, but it also brings people together and you have a new look you have a fresh look at what's important. Do you want to ask your question?
Well, I guess I'm we're talking about age, seniors, how to characterize people, and it really comes down to segmenting the market based on a single characteristic of a demographic versus interests. And it seems like there is greater interest. Maybe it's, anyway, it seems like there's more interest in and concern about the financial security of the family because of the pandemic. And is there a way to extend the benefit of retirement plans? For example, maybe offer if at age retirement, that person, that customer doesn't need as much income, but maybe they would prefer the option of lowering their annuity, but providing instead as kind of an adjunct benefit, a benefit to the family or to another family member. It's I guess thinking broader about financial security in retirement is what I'm, where I'm going with this. And is there a way to make products more flexible so that without increasing the financial expense on the company, to provide more options in terms of how you take the retirement benefits?
Yeah, let me just throw this question to Rian. Rian, your app is, yeah, I love what your position of, in question around a senior, but, is the app an app for a person, or is the plan for a group of people or a group of a family unit? What's your thought there?
So we spend a tremendous amount of time doing research in this space, and the earliest ideas we had actually were around financial caregiving. And while conceptually they make a lot of sense, the actual sale process is super difficult because you've got two different parties now that you're trying to get to the table. What we heard over and over again from our consumers who are in their 50s and 60s was that the vast majority of them were making this decision either on their own or with their spouse. They would make these throwaway comments, and which are probably even more relevant today when COVID, which is like, my child is still living downstairs. So now it's like, my child is back, right? My child is in the basement. They don't have a house of their own. Like, they're unemployed. Like, why would I bring them into like my whole financial picture? And so what we set out to do in version 1 of the Silver app was to create an ecosystem that allowed two parties to actually look at the picture together. We have created an ecosystem that's really inclusive. So 50% of our customers are female, which I'm particularly proud of because you typically don't see women in their 50s and 60s having an equal set of the table or equal place at the table when it comes to these decisions. When I think about what does Silver look like 20 years from now, I think a lot about family, because I think about the ecosystem that we've built for this independent baby boomer in their 50s and 60s, that as they get into their 70s and 80s and an adult child does start to become involved, instead of what we all know as that like fire sale experience where like, mom falls, daughter comes in, tries to figure out like what mom's insurance situation looks like, all we've got to do is actually give her access to the app. But that's not the problem my customer is solving today. My customer today is trying to figure out Medicare for themselves. And so I think we can build that platform over time. It's a super interesting acquisition tool because if I, as a adult daughter, come into an app that my dad has and I have a good experience and I happen to be in my 50s myself, like I'm probably going to want to use that app for myself too. And so like we do think about that like flywheel, but I think you really have to think about like where you're starting the journey and who's actually empowered. The one exception to that I would say is around healthcare. What we have seen is that caregivers are very engaged around the health side of the equation. I just think the financial side tends to be this like one-time situation. It's like, let me figure it all out, and then you go back to the healthcare. And that I think for us made it a very challenging acquisition framework.
You know, I think one of the things that we hear a lot is the challenge of prospecting. So, you know, client engagement has been pretty straightforward with Zoom meetings, but getting in front of new prospects has been a challenge. And Kathy, I know you said, I think you had 9 Zoom meetings earlier today. How are you getting in front of new prospects through digital engagement?
Yeah, what we're finding is a lot of people are reaching out to us through our website. Depending upon what your interests are, once you log on to our website and you look around or look at a few things, you get enrolled into an automatic email drip campaign that targets what your interests are. And then you continue to get drips, and we can go as fast as you want or as slow as you want. And then we have people that after they've received several emails and maybe a white paper or some other things that allows them to see that we're real and some information they can trust, I mean, they can verify and they feel like they can trust us, then they'll schedule either an online appointment with us. We have a submission form on our website. They can also send us a live chat message to request that. The one thing too that's very interesting that we implemented at the beginning of this quote unquote COVID is that every single one of our telephone calls is answered live 24/7. And we have an amazing service that we've been working with. It's MoneyPenny. I recommend it to anybody and everybody. They answer the calls. It's 24/7. They email us all the information. So we immediately are able to get right back to the client. They never receive voicemail. Even on a customer service issue, if they need to even take a withdrawal on the weekends, we'll get an email. So we're there, we're following the prospect as closely as we can, and then we're able to get the meetings booked and just move on down the road with them. So I find that we're going as fast as they are, and we're responding just as quickly as they are versus waiting until tomorrow morning or Monday if they've reached out over, to us over the weekend, because it's their money and they're thinking about it right now, or it's their life insurance or long-term care. So I really feel like that has really pushed us to a new level. And it's MoneyPenny, and they're great, and they have a script and they handle everything for us.
That's awesome. I guess is there any one thing that you would change back to the way you did business prior to the adjustments and adoptions you made from the pandemic?
I would have to say, based upon my numbers this year, not a dang thing.
That's great. That's awesome.
That's great. I guess just shifting the conversation a little bit in terms of how and where we engage. I do think there's. We had Moshe Milevsky. Mark and I had Moshe Milevsky, who's this famous behavioral finance professor out of Canada, on our podcast, and he told us, well, I asked him a question, and he said, well, okay, what are you talking about, your chronological age or your biological age? And I do think there's a difference. If you start to go the spectrum, forget what it says in your driver's license. There is that older. There are older behaviors. And Neil, I'll throw this question to you, which is, and you mentioned this, but Ramsey actually put a question in here. What is the screen, and how does the screen change? I think Reen's made a real compelling case that the mobile phone is the screen that we should be focused on. Should it be the TV set? And does that happen more in later ages? And is that really driven by the facility and the institution helping these people, or is it still an individual connection with an individual senior?
So I'm gonna take a little bit of a different angle on this and touch on a couple of points that were just made. And somebody mentioned family caregiver, and it seems a little bit counterintuitive or sneaking behind the back of the senior, but really engaging with the family caregiver is so important. we are finding in some of our conversations with long-term care insurers, with folks in other markets, that they see that when the family caregiving support, which is, without a doubt, the backbone of support to the seniors, when that starts eroding away for whatever reason, it definitely automatically affects the senior. And so I think of this analogy, if you're in the airplane, the oxygen mask drops down, they said, put it on your mouth first before you help somebody else. So I think we need to also expand the scope of how do we help that age group by looking at the family caregivers, making sure that they are emotionally and physically strong to be able to provide the support, and that they have all the resources.
So one maybe just comment there. I kind of any sort of political views aside, I think one of the things that's exciting about the platform that we should see out of the Biden administration next year is a renewed focus on, or even not even renewed, a new focus on caregivers. So there's some basic tax credits, which frankly probably don't go far enough. The item that I think is like most intriguing is this recognition that a lot of family caregivers are unpaid. And if you're unpaid, you can't typically contribute to an IRA. The Biden administration has said that one of their priorities is going to be to allow Americans in their 50s and 60s who are acting as unpaid caregivers to actually make their catch-up contributions to IRAs. And I think that's one step in recognizing the financial burden that's actually on the next generation of being a caregiver.
Yeah, and if I can just jump in here for a second on that unpaid caregiver, we are seeing many US employers and other parts of the world who are giving employees time off if they need to care for an elderly loved one. And so it's going even further, not only a paid time off, but there are starting to be these caregiver products that are entering the marketplace, which will, replace your income for the time that you're away so that you can continue to contribute to your retirement, your 401k, et cetera. So there are a lot of nice supporting things that are happening in the marketplace around caregivers.
Yuka, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I know you've done a lot for fundraising and for some of the startups we know. I believe you've been focused primarily on the P&C side. However, our business really well. As an investor, you hear these ideas, these challenges. Is it possible to invest in let's call it non-senior senior engagement, or it's the same tech stack? It's really just a matter of focusing on a set of customers we haven't focused on today.
Invest specifically in that type of company?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the clients we work with, not exactly in the retirement space, but sort of in the cancer space, and with a very interesting concept and helping people through cancer, and then there's various aspects to it. But yeah, no, I mean, investors will invest in any kind of concept that if there's enough of a market opportunity as far as they can see. Now, of course, because of the pandemic, currently most of the VC investors have been focusing on just their portfolio companies. Well, there's definitely people making investments, but primary focus has been on the portfolio companies as opposed to making new investments. One thing, if I may just make a comment that I had made in one of these other sessions in our breakout room about having worked with a startup in the retirement income space that sort of was maybe a little too early, but I don't know if people realize that the median retirement savings in the US, the number is 0. So I'm not talking about average, but the median retirement savings. And people tend to forget that the 401k plan was never intended to be the main retirement plan for people. It was supposed to be a supplemental retirement plan.
So Yuka, I'm going to be controversial again, and I want to take the other side of the conversation about investors. I think that generally the West Coast, so Silicon Valley, does not understand this demographic. I know that when I pitch a round that I'm raising, if I get a 25-year-old VC from Stanford on the phone, like, it ain't happening. It just isn't happening. And I think this is actually, it's really interesting because I think this is an opportunity for incumbents. Because what I see over and over again is that incumbents know the value of these customers. They understand the loyalty of this customer. They understand the suite of decisions this customer is going to make. And so when I think about like a segment or a space from an investment perspective that incumbents can have a real leg up, I actually feel like this space is a real opportunity, because I think the VCs, like 3 years ago when I first started raising money, like I spent my whole time trying to explain the addressable market. Like we've gotten past that and everyone's talking about it, but they expect the business to look like a millennial business, which is like acquiring customers for nothing on TikTok. And that's just like that's just not the way the acquisition model works.
No.
So I would just like throw that out there, which is like, there's different types of investors. I think in this space, like incumbents have this huge opportunity that's actually like, you already know the value of this customer. Like Silicon Valley is trying to figure out like, are these customers valuable? Are they online? Can they be acquired? And you all already know the answer is yes to all of that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree that there are some, like you mentioned, Silicon Valley, their focus tend to be different, and they don't necessarily understand this particular industry. But obviously, there are many investors who are focused on this part of the world, if you will. And then, of course, there are the incumbents. So many of them have their own VC funds these days. And obviously, they know the business. But obviously, in many cases, they're so slow to change and learn and adapt. But yeah, no, I agree with you.
Tom, I guess from a manufacturer's perspective, should we be looking at changing the nature of products that we're offering? Do you see opportunities that can arise from what's going on currently?
Yeah, I think there's a couple themes that came up today that are interesting, which, you know, kind of a broader view of the family, and obviously we have, you know, products in the industry that benefit, you know, couples, but you know, somebody mentioned healthcare and covering kids up to age 26, and are there things that we can do that can expand the benefits? And maybe there's got to be some sacrifice for that, but I think that people might give up a little bit if they could protect others in their family. Some may not have any interest in that, but I'm sure some would. So I think there's a few things there that could be intriguing.
Agreed.
All right. Hey, Don, well, your camera's off, but just give us your perspective. I know your whole team has been. Did we lose Don?
No, I'm here. I'm here, Paul.
Oh, you are. Hi. Yeah, Don. Just give us your perspective from Symetra on you know, how you're looking at this entire demographic.
I was just thinking about that, Paul, in terms of not overly pigeonholing ourselves into strict segmentations, because the opportunity through the amount of data we have, the amount of devices in the environment, the flow of information is that we can move more hyper-personalization side than just broader segmentation. So I think that's a bias that we're trying to explore at Symetra to see what could we do in that space. But there is a distinct opportunity to think about how decisions around health and decisions around wealth influence each other, and how there are commonalities between the way people decide about health and the way they decide about finances that could be explored. So I think it's just a very exciting time to be looking in this space. I think the notion of products, that's not my specialty, but I think there's so much opportunity to build different types of products that are almost like micro products that allow people to compose differently depending on their own needs. I'll step back.
So Laura, I think we're at time, right?
We are. So playing on the theme of opportunity, we wanted to give opportunity this afternoon to have a startup kind of highlight what they're doing, give you a 2-minute rundown on who they are, how they're playing in the marketplace. So it's my pleasure to introduce Mary Kotzman, COO of Intergen Data. And Mary, the mic is all yours.
Hi, well, thank you very much. I was thrilled to listen to all of this. Intergen Data is a technology firm that uses artificial intelligence and machine learning and non-PII demographics that, when combined, develop correlations to identify life stage and life events for people. And what that does is it tells us we have the ability at this time to predict up to 80 illnesses and 12 life stage events. So we actually built this model using the financial services side and our experience. So we could provide the data to companies to, I heard the term here, hyper personalize products and services for consumers based on their unique life stage events and illnesses. So what that does is firms, insurance firms, providers, wealth advisory firms, anybody that provide, even estate attorneys, use this data to develop an actual cash flow. So not only can we predict the life events, we can tell you when they're going to happen, the likelihood of what the cost related to those life events are going to be. So I'm gonna just, if I can I share a screen real quick?
Yes, you may.
Awesome. So I am going to share what this looks like. So basically, I'm going to give you this view here. So what we do is we take data. So we have a database or data lake of over 7 years of US information. We source data from the government, various other applications and places, and we correlate all of this life data. And we build out a cost analysis. So this is just one way to visualize the answers. So we look at this person and we can tell you by race, age, gender, in particular, the educational levels, everything is correlated. If they're in rural or urban America, and this is US data. So what we do, and we can actually build this out for the entire family. Every person gets a unique cash flow analysis. And basically it tells them what their life stage and life events are going to be based on these specific demographic points. Marriages, children, when you're going to buy your first home. And more importantly, we integrate that with the health issues that surround us. We don't know that, you know, when we're planning for our future, we don't really plan for what could happen on the bad side. So what we've done is we've taken this information and we've built the correlations out, and we can predict things like cancer and diabetes and Alzheimer's and, you know, various depressions and that type of thing. And depending on where you live and your education level, your age, that type of thing, we can actually provide costs. So when you're talking with your customers or you're trying to engage with new consumers, you can place products at the right time, at the right place. So when we built this out for this particular client, we showed them how the consumer can actually look at this information, and this person actually has a propensity for cancer. And we were able to use the data from the insurer to build out their costs. What the cancer treatments looks like, critical illness, hospital costs, and then the average insurance coverage and the remaining expenses that that consumer is going to incur. And here is where we would link the right information to the right products, or if the person wants to talk to an agent or, you know, that type of thing, we could actually link them directly to a service provider. So this is, I didn't have a lot of time, so I just wanted to give you the snapshot because this is just a visualization of the data that we built out. We call it DAVID, Digital Advice for Demographics. But we have 93 other points of data that, you know, corporations, businesses could look at and say, we want this information to design hyper personalized marketing, or to align products with services with the consumer before they need it, not after they need it, and the integration here, the conversation today that I find the senior conversation very interesting, because I'm that person. I'm 58, I'm mature, I'm a gig worker now, or actually I work with InterGen now. But for years, I did not interact in the technology level. This gives people like me, but even more importantly, the younger demographic, and I actually think they're going to interact with this in a much better way.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Thank you so much, Mary. And to me, it's kind of almost like it's created a digital crystal ball where if it were me and I would see this, I'd want to go jump out of a plane. So maybe my insurance liability would go up in that place and go skydiving and go do some fun things. So it's amazing what we can see when certain data points come together to tell a larger picture and to inform behaviors and inform decisions and conversations. So in our last minute here, and to be cognizant of time, wanted to take a second to thank everyone. Seth, thank you to the panel and all the panelists. As you know, this is Forum 3 of 5. We have the final 2 forums coming up next week on December 15 and 16. It's going to be talking about delivering products of the future for the next generation of retirees and creating online security for seniors and their savings. So whether or not we're going to use the term seniors moving forward is to tell. But thank you again all for being here. And Paul, anything you'd like to close out with for today?
No, hey, listen, just share my thanks. Listen, have a great evening, and hope to see you next week.